Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a text that, well, even though it's ancient, it speaks so directly to our modern struggles, with insufficiency, chaos, and even guilt.
Hmm.
We're looking at David's Psalm 65.
Mm.
It's this profound declaration that connects the most intimate human experience, our need for forgiveness, with the most staggeringly grand divine displays.
Mm.
I mean, God's sovereign power over the entire cosmos.
Indeed. And this is such a crucial deep dive for anyone who's trying to reconcile let's say, the smallness of their prayer life with the immense power of the God they're praying to.
Right.
So we're turning the spotlight on Psalm 65, and our guide today is the insightful commentary from the UNFIJ team. They title this psalm perfectly, I think. A song of praise for God's forgiveness and abundance.
That's a great title.
It is. So our task is to move systematically, verse by verse, and let the architecture of David's praise really rebuild our own understanding of who God is and, well, how he acts.
And that structural approach is so essential because this psalm, it doesn't start where a lot of people start their prayers, with a list of needs.
Not at all.
It starts at the foundation of why. Why are we even allowed to approach God in the first place?
Yeah.
It's all about worship and his character. So our mission is to transform this poetic imagery into a practical, deeply understood framework for you, the listener, focusing on the character of this prayer-hearing God.
Mm-hmm.
So we began where David began. We're looking at verses 1 and 2, which really establish the framework for expectant praise and reveal God's universal reach.
Let's do it.
All right, let's jump right into the very unique posture of devotion that's established in verse 1. Okay, let's unpack this opening statement.
Yeah.
Psalm 65.1, KJV says, "Praise waiteth for thee, O God, in Zion, and unto thee shall the vow be performed."
That phrase, praise waiteth, it's extraordinarily layered. It seems, a bit counterintuitive to the immediate, often emotional expression we associate with praise.
Right. Waiting doesn't sound very enthusiastic.
Exactly. But the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team suggests this is not a lack of enthusiasm, but rather what they term a mature praise.
Mature praise. I like that.
It's not the frantic emotional output of someone trying to, convince God to act. It is a settled, confident expectation. The worthiness of God is just an established fact. It's a settled theological reality in the psalmist's heart.
I love that distinction. If you are confident that something is coming, like a delayed package is on the way or a guaranteed appointment, you aren't anxious.
No.
You're simply waiting with expectation. It suggests a kind of rest, a spiritual equilibrium that's born from a deep, trusting relationship. If your praise is waiting, it means your assurance is greater than your current circumstance.
Precisely. And this internal disposition, this expectant confidence, is immediately linked to external action in the second half of the verse.
And unto thee shall the vow be performed.
Yes. This is where the practical rubber meets the theological road. The You Need Faith in Jesus team really stresses that true worship is holistic. It involves both our internal words and our external actions, specifically our commitments. David is talking about the community of faith taking its promises seriously.
So we're not just talking about, tithing or some big life-altering promise. We're talking about the daily, maybe even mundane commitments we make to God.
Mm-hmm.
About how we live, how we interact with people, how we serve. If the praise is waiting, then the preparation for fulfilling that vow must be active.
That's right. The integrity of the worshiper is really being measured here. If our words declare God is worthy, but our failure to honor our vows, our promises, our commitments to walk in his way, if that betrays those words, the praise is just incomplete.
So the performance of the vow is the proof.
It's the practical evidence that the praise is genuinely mature and settled.
And this commitment to perpetual worship, even outside of the physical temple context of Zion, that's an enduring principle, isn't it? It gets carried forward so powerfully into the New Testament church.
It absolutely does. And the commentary is keen to connect this to the perpetual sacrifice of praise that's available to us today. They cite Hebrews 13.15 KJV. By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God continually, that is, the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. Continually. And this shows us that the sacrifice is the continual nature of the act itself. It's the willingness to give thanks even when the circumstances aren't ideal. It's the fruit of our lips, always available, always a necessary part of our relationship.
I have a moment of, let's say, constructive tension here, though, when I look at that. If the action of performing the vow is part of the praise, does that risk sliding back into a kind of works-based understanding of religion?
That's a really important question.
How does this commentary guard against that sort of legalistic interpretation?
It's a great question, and the commentary addresses this maybe implicitly by focusing on the source of the praise, back in verse 1. The whole psalm is predicated on a God who is worthy, not on the merit of the person performing the vow.
Okay.
So the performance of the vow isn't what earns you the right to praise. It's the natural, necessary overflow of a heart that already trusts and expects God to act. It's evidence of a settled faith, not a prerequisite for acceptance.
So it moves us from a demanding faith.
Yes, from God, do this and then I'll praise you, to an expectant faith. God, I will praise you now because I know you will act.
That clarification is vital. It shifts the focus right back to grace and integrity. So bringing this into our daily lives, what's the clear, practical takeaway that the You Need Faith in Jesus team outlines first from this?
They make it very practical. We're reminded that praise today isn't confined to a building or a special event or just a Sunday morning. It has to retain that settled, expectant character in all circumstances.
What's the action?
The practical action is twofold. First, we have to ensure our hearts are always ready to give thanks, a posture of constant gratitude. And second, crucially, we must be people who honor the commitments and vows we make to the Lord daily. We have to understand that our actions are an inseparable part of our total act of worship.
That is accountability built right into the framework of devotion.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving to verse 2. David immediately provides the defining character trait of this God that justifies all this praise. It explains why we should have this expectant confidence. Let's read it. Psalm 65.2, KJV. O thou that hearest prayer, unto thee shall all flesh come.
Thou that hearest prayer. The You Need Faith in Jesus team calls this a foundational aspect of his character. Now think about that. Not creator, not king, but hearer of prayer.
That's powerful.
It is. This title is the hinge upon which all human interaction with the divine rests. If God were not a listener, worship would just be a monologue, and a relationship would be pointless. This title establishes him as actively attentive and, well, intimately engaged.
It fundamentally changes our whole approach to spirituality. I mean, if we were just praying to some distant deistic creator who set the cosmos spinning and then retired,
Right.
our prayers would indeed be lost in an empty void. But this title, it establishes that we are speaking to someone who is present and listening. And that validation is critical for expectant praise.
And because of this relational, active, listening nature, David makes a monumental prophetic claim in the second half of the verse. He says, "Unto thee shall all flesh come."
All flesh.
That phrase, all flesh, is incredibly inclusive. It just breaks down all ethnic, geographic, and temporal barriers.
You know, in David's time, this would have been a staggering concept. I mean, given the focus on Israel and Zion.
Absolutely.
David is looking beyond the limits of Jerusalem and envisioning people from every nation, every culture, being drawn to the prayer-hearing God. The commentary calls this a wonderfully inclusive vision.
It truly is a prophetic roadmap. But while the invitation extends to all people, the mechanism of approach has to remain consistent. This universal access doesn't mean multiple conflicting paths exist.
Right. And the New Testament really clarifies how this inclusive vision is actually realized.
It does, and this is where the identity of the mediator becomes paramount.
The one way.
Precisely. We connect this universal access directly to the role of Christ, and the commentary cites John 14.6 KJV. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father, but by me. Jesus becomes the singular, consistent mediator. The reach is universal, all flesh, but the way is singular through him.
And that keeps the approach standardized. It ensures that grace, rather than personal merit or ritual, is the basis for getting access.
Exactly.
So we have a God who is committed to listening and who has made a way for every single person on earth to come to him. What does this confidence mean for us today, practically?
Well, the practical application, as the You Need Faith in Jesus team outlines it, moves us from just passive reassurance to active evangelism. We're encouraged not only to rest in the fact that we don't pray into an empty sky, but to act on it.
Because we know he's listening.
Yes, because we know his nature is to listen and his invitation is universal, this should motivate us to share this good news. The action is clear. Our confidence in God's listening ear should drive us to invite others, people from all backgrounds and nations, to come to him through Jesus.
What a powerful foundation. We start with quiet, expectant praise and perform vows, and it's all grounded in the reality of a God accessible to everyone on earth. But, access alone isn't enough.
No.
Because what are we bringing with us when we approach this holy presence? And that question takes us straight into section 2, where the psalm deals with the deep, necessary work of cleansing before we can truly dwell with him.
A crucial step.
Section 2 opens with just a jarring moment of absolute honesty. It's a necessary admission that sits right in the middle of this song of praise. David pivots from universal awe to a deeply personal and yet corporate confession.
It's so raw.
It is. Let's read the powerful honesty of Psalm 65.3, KJV. Iniquities prevail against me. As for our transgressions, thou shalt purge them away.
The sheer honesty here is just breathtaking. The psalmist isn't minimizing his failings or, engaging in some kind of false humility.
No, this feels real.
It's very real. The commentary emphasizes this as an honest admission of struggle. He states that his failures and sins are sometimes overwhelming. Iniquities prevail against me. This reflects the shared, undeniable reality that all humanity is sinful by nature. David, the king, the great worshiper, is still struggling under the sheer weight of personal imperfection.
He recognizes that internal battle.
Yes, the battle against holiness.
That word prevail, it's so important. It doesn't suggest a momentary lapse. It suggests a battle that's frequently lost, or at least one that feels like this powerful, rising tide that's threatening to drown you.
A great way to put it.
It's an admission that the natural pull of our fallen nature is sometimes stronger than our resolve. So why is it so crucial for David to emphasize the prevalence of sin before moving on?
Well, it's crucial because it establishes that the solution has to be divine, not human. If our iniquities just, lapsed occasionally, we might assume we could fix them with a little more effort.
Right, just try harder.
But if they prevail, it means the problem is systemic. It's embedded in our nature, and therefore the solution cannot come from us. It has to be an act of complete supernatural purging by God himself.
So the confession, then, isn't an ending of despair. It's the essential setup for the declaration of faith that comes right after.
Absolutely. That is the pivot of faith. As for our transgressions, thou shalt purge them away. The psalmist declares that God himself will execute the cleansing, the purging away of these overwhelming sins. This is a forward-looking statement.
It's a promise.
It's an affirmation that God provides the only effective solution to humanity's prevailing problem. Forgiveness is coming because God is faithful to his own covenant promises.
And this faith in a future cleansing is, for us today, realized and completed through the new covenant, and it's perfectly captured in that passage from John.
Yes, the commentary draws a firm line connecting this expectation to its fulfillment, quoting 1 John 1.9 KJV. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness.
Faithful and just.
Exactly. That verse doesn't just promise forgiveness, it anchors it in God's character. He is faithful, he keeps his promise, and he is obligated to forgive because Christ paid the penalty. Forgiveness through Christ becomes a righteous act, not just a lenient one.
The clarity of that promise is so essential for the core of our daily walk, especially when we feel that sense of iniquity prevailing. So what's the practical instruction here from the You Need Faith in Jesus team for the listener facing this constant internal struggle?
They define this process as the core of our daily walk. The action has to be immediate and built on radical honesty and faith. We must be honest enough to admit when we fall short, but we are absolutely instructed not to linger in shame or despair.
That's key. Don't stay there.
Don't stay there. The instruction is to immediately turn to the cross, confess our specific sin, and trust implicitly in the finished work of Jesus for cleansing and restoration of fellowship. It's a daily application of a finished work, a process of constant spiritual maintenance.
That process of cleansing leads so naturally to the resulting privilege, the blessing of closeness. Once that barrier of sin is dealt with, the relationship is restored.
Right. Section 2.2.
Let's read the blessing and privilege found in Psalm 65.4 KJV. Blessed is the man whom thou choosest, and causest to approach unto thee, that he may dwell in thy courts. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of thy house, even of thy holy temple.
This sequence, it just describes an incredible privilege, and it emphasizes the profound initiative of God. Did you notice the order?
Yeah. Chosen, caused to approach, then allowed to dwell.
It's all his action. The privilege is entirely unearned. For David, dwelling in the courts meant physical access to the temple structure, the epicenter of worship. But for us, the spiritual reality is so much deeper. It signifies restored relationship and intimate fellowship with the Almighty.
It's the ultimate expression of acceptance. We were just confessing that we were enemies, basically in verse 3, and now we are invited guests, even residents. And this closeness, this dwelling, leads to an outcome David specifically calls satisfaction. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of thy house.
And this is where we really have to pause, because David is defining satisfaction in a way that's completely contrary to the world's definition. The You Need Faith in Jesus Team commentary clarifies that the satisfaction sought here is fundamentally not material wealth or prestige or some temporary comfort.
It's something else.
It is derived solely from the goodness of God's presence, the eternal resources and fellowship found in his house.
I want to introduce a challenge here. We live in a world that relentlessly chases material security and comfort. So how do we explain to the listener why dwelling in the presence of God, an invisible, non-tangible state, produces a deeper, more lasting satisfaction than finally achieving financial security or professional recognition?
That's a necessary challenge, and the difference lies in the nature of the resource. Material satisfaction is finite and fleeting, it requires constant renewal and maintenance, and it's so easily disrupted by external chaos.
It's fragile.
Very. But the goodness derived from God's house, his presence, his character, his love, that is infinite and unchangeable. It addresses the deepest human need, which isn't comfort, but reconciliation and purpose. Dwelling in his courts means aligning ourselves with the source of true purpose, making us impervious to the shifting tides of the material world. That stability is satisfaction.
And this privilege of closeness, this dwelling in the house of God, is the established status of every modern believer through the New Testament.
It is, and the commentary beautifully connects this ancient dwelling privilege to our contemporary status, quoting Ephesians 2.1 time KJV. Now, therefore, ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God. We've been brought near entirely by grace.
From outsiders to family.
Exactly, transforming our status from distant outsiders to members of God's own household.
So if we truly possess this profound spiritual citizenship, how does the You Need Faith in Jesus team instruct us to apply this reality?
The primary application is to fight against spiritual apathy. We must never, ever lose the sense of wonder at this staggering reality. We have to actively recognize that the deepest, truest satisfaction in life is found in dwelling in God's presence.
And there's an action, too.
Yes, they add a specific, actionable element, noting that entering this new household is done through faith, which should then be publicly declared through baptism. That public declaration symbolizes both the entry into this new citizenship and the commitment to abide in his courts.
We've moved from personal confession and fellowship to a confident public declaration of new life. And now this intimate scene, it dramatically shifts gears in section 3. It transitions from the quiet of the temple court to the thunder of God's global intervention.
Yeah, the scale is about to explode.
This is where the scale of the psalm it explodes. We've established that God hears prayer, and now David describes how God responds to prayer, and sometimes it's in ways that are far beyond what we typically imagine.
That's for sure.
Let's introduce the powerful response in Psalm 65.5, KJV. By terrible things in righteousness wilt thou answer us, O God of our salvation, who art the confidence of all the ends of the earth, and of them that are afar off upon the sea.
When we encounter that phrase, terrible things, it just stops us cold, doesn't it?
It does. Terrible is not a good word in our vocabulary.
No, our modern sensibility associates it with something purely negative or devastating. But the analysis of the original language, as provided in the commentary, is essential here. It defines terrible things as awesome, powerful, and fear-inspiring acts. The intent is not terror, but profound, overwhelming awe at the display of divine might.
That distinction is so crucial. It suggests God's answers aren't always gentle affirmations or quiet confirmations. Sometimes the answer we receive is a dramatic, world-shaping intervention that is just undeniable. But the key is that modifier. These acts are always executed in righteousness.
Exactly. They are never capricious or random. They are perfectly aligned with his just and holy character. They are mighty, awe-inspiring acts performed by a righteous God of salvation who intervenes on behalf of his people.
We want the easy, quiet answers.
We do. But sometimes God delivers the answer through an event that leaves the entire world breathless. A major societal shift, a miraculous deliverance, or a powerful demonstration of judgment.
And this is the very reason why he is the confidence of all the ends of the earth. This power isn't localized.
The commentary stresses this universal reach. God's power is not limited by geography or culture or technology. Whether you are anchored on the land or afar off upon the sea, the farthest reaches of known territory, God is the one in whom all people can ultimately place their trust.
His ability to intervene with these terrible things is the guarantee of his sovereignty.
It is. Overall boundary.
And this idea of intervention with awe-inspiring power, it's perfectly demonstrated by Jesus when he was here on earth. It validates the Psalm's declaration of his mighty authority.
Oh, absolutely. The commentary references that famous miracle when Jesus calmed the storm on the Sea of Galilee. They cite Mark 4.41 KJV, recording the disciples' reaction, feared exceedingly, and said one to another, "What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
They feared exceedingly.
Their reaction wasn't mere curiosity. It was a profound, deeply reverent awe. They recognized that only a divine authority could command the natural world so effortlessly. That profound, fear-inspiring recognition is precisely what David means by God answering through terrible things in righteousness.
I think we need to challenge ourselves here. If we're praying for a resolution to a major, seemingly insurmountable problem, a health crisis, a global political tension, we often pray for a quiet miracle, a gentle easing of the situation. But this verse challenges us to expand our expectation. What if the answer requires God to act in a terrible, awe-inspiring way that shakes the systems around us?
That is the core challenge here. And the practical application, as urged by the You Need Faith in Jesus team, hinges on rejecting our tendency to limit God. We have to be prepared not just for gentle answers, but for him to act in powerful and extraordinary ways. We need to surrender our preferred methods of resolution.
So when we seek salvation from difficulty,
We must be ready for him to intervene with displays of divine power that leave us, and those watching, utterly convinced of his authority.
that's a good mental recalibration. God is not simply a quiet counselor. He is a cosmic shaper of history. And that cosmic shaping power is the foundation for the next section.
Yes, exactly.
David now builds on the idea of God's awe-inspiring answers by focusing on the sheer, inherent strength that guarantees his ability to intervene decisively.
He's laying out the resume, so to speak.
He is. We look first at the creative stability in Psalm 65.6 KJV, which by his strength setteth fast the mountains, being girded with power.
The imagery is monumental. He's using the mountains as the ultimate symbol of permanence, stability, and unmovable authority. To say God setteth fast the mountains is to assert that he not only created the earth, but continually sustains its very foundation.
It's an incredible feat of engineering, really.
Oh, globally, effortlessly, simply by his inherent strength.
And that phrase, being girded with power, transforms the image from just a static creation to something dynamic, something active.
Yes. Girded with power is an allusion to a warrior wrapping a belt or a sash around themselves to prepare for physical labor or battle. It means the power is not passive or dormant. It is active, ready, and constantly available for action.
So this inherent ready power ensures his universal ability to sustain and intervene.
In all things, large and small. And that transitions perfectly into his control over chaos, which is the theme of the next verse. If he established the foundations of the mountains, he certainly controls what happens on their surface and in the seas beneath them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Psalm 65.7 KJV details how this power extends directly to sources of chaos, which stilleth the noise of the seas, the noise of their waves, and the tumult of the people.
And what's so fascinating here is the dual control, and this is where the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really shines. God's sovereignty is explicitly declared over both the natural world and the human sphere.
Dual control.
Yes. He silences the chaotic seas and the noise of their waves, the natural disorder, the literal storms, the forces that threaten to overwhelm us from the outside. But he equally stills the tumult of the people. And this tumult is defined as human rebellion, political unrest, social panic, and the societal chaos created by conflict.
So David is saying the God who commands the ocean also have ultimate authority over the political and emotional chaos of nations.
That's it. And that gives us immense perspective when we look at the world today. We can feel completely overwhelmed by the 24/7 news cycle, the rising political tensions, the general social anxiety gripping communities. It feels like an unstoppable, chaotic wave.
It does feel that way.
But the psalm assures us that human chaos, as overwhelming as it is fundamentally subject to the same divine authority that controls a tidal wave. When we are facing societal storms or internal anxiety or political division that seems to roar like the sea, our confidence is anchored in the fact that God can bring order to all of it. He is mightier than the noise.
And we see this supremacy reinforced over and over in the scriptures.
We do. To reinforce this divine might, we can look to Psalm 93.4 KJV. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. This imagery is so crucial for you as a listener. It assures us that the most violent, terrifying forces of nature, and by extension, the most violent forces of human affairs, are mere whispers compared to God's command.
His power guarantees ultimate control and ultimate order.
It does.
So we face both the internal storms of anxiety and the external conflicts of societal uncertainty. How does this overwhelming sovereignty translate into practical trust for us, according to the You Need Faith in Jesus team?
The practical action is profoundly comforting. To anchor our trust in the sovereign power. When we are facing internal panic or external conflicts, we must intentionally place our trust in a God whose power established the entire earth and set fast the mountains.
If he can do that.
If he can do that, he can certainly bring stability to our volatile world and peace to our individual hearts. The instruction is to remember that the God who can silence a literal ocean can also silence the metaphorical political noise, the social media chaos, and the internal panic we experience.
That is a truth worth dwelling on. And it moves us to section 5, where David demonstrates that this power isn't only displayed in these huge earth-shaking events or global calming, but in the quiet, faithful, daily cycles of life itself.
The everyday miracles.
Exactly. Now we look at how God's majesty provides an undeniable universal testimony, not just through grand miracles, but through routine.
Let's hear it.
Psalm 65.8 KJV. They also that dwell in the uttermost parts are afraid at thy tokens. Thou makest the outgoings of the morning and evening to rejoice.
This is such a powerful point about universal witness. The You Need Faith in Jesus team commentary discusses how God's tokens, his recurring signs, are so obvious and so evident that even people in the most remote or isolated places are filled with awe, afraid in the sense of holy reverence.
And what are these universal tokens?
The cycle of day and night, the reliable sunrise, the spectacular sunset, they are undeniable evidence delivered daily, regardless of your geographic location.
The poetic description is just incredible. David doesn't simply note that the sun appears and disappears. He says, God maketh the outgoings of the morning and evening to rejoice. It's like creation itself is joyful and purposeful and faithfully obedient to the divine command.
It's a massive universal celebration unfolding before us every single day, and it's a testament to the order and the faithfulness of the Creator, the reliability, the beauty, the scale of these daily tokens. They provide an undeniable testimony to God's existence and power.
And this principle of self-evident truth is one that the New Testament confirms explicitly. Let's read that crucial passage from Paul in Romans, which validates David's observation.
Yes, we connect this directly to the truth in Romans 1.20, KJV. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead.
So the evidence is clearly seen.
Paul's point is that the physical evidence of the cosmos makes the invisible, eternal qualities of God, his power, his deity visible and understandable to all. The proof is literally in the daily cycle. The evidence is inescapable.
So the challenge isn't whether the evidence exists, but whether we choose to notice it. I mean, amidst the rush of modern life, we rush past sunrises on the commute and scroll past sunsets on our phones.
We do.
What is the active, practical step the You Need Faith in Jesus team urges us to take regarding these daily miracles?
The practical instruction is deceptively simple. Commit to noticing these daily miracles. Instead of letting the beauty of the sunrise or the tranquility of the sunset become background noise, they must be transformed into intentional, specific reminders of God's faithful power and sovereignty.
So the action is to pause.
The action is to pause and allow these natural cycles to be a reason for personal, heartfelt rejoicing at the start and end of each day. It's about cultivating active awareness and deep gratitude, turning routine into an opportunity for ritualistic worship.
That truly reframes our day. Instead of rushing past the sunrise, we pause and recognize it as a daily token of the same power that set fast the mountains. And this attention to detail transitions us perfectly into section 6, where God's power is shown not in grand gestures, but in the meticulous intimacy of providing for that creation.
From the cosmic to the agricultural.
Yes, David moves from the vastness of the cosmos to the intimate detail of the agricultural field, demonstrating that God's sovereignty isn't just remote control, it's hands-on care.
The intimacy of sustaining provision.
Let's look at Psalm 65.9, KJV. Thou visitest the earth and waterest it. Thou greatly enrichest it with the river of God, which is full of water. Thou preparest them corn when thou so provided for it.
The most important word there, I think, is the verb visitest. This demonstrates God's active, intimate, continuous involvement. He did not simply wind up the world like a clock. He actively tends to it, returning again and again.
So he's not a distant deity.
No, the commentary stresses that this active visitation shows he is deeply concerned with the physical, practical needs of his creation.
And the source of this provision is described so poetically as just, inexhaustible. He doesn't just provide rain, he greatly enriches it with the river of God, which is full of water.
That phrase, the river of God, is such a powerful metaphor. It represents an unlimited divine source of life-giving water, something far beyond any physical river. It is a symbol for the inexhaustible supply of God's grace and provision. He doesn't just supply sufficiency, he greatly enriches.
Which implies overflow, abundance.
Exactly, and this provision is purposeful. Thou preparest them corn. Every act of provision is measured and aimed towards the successful yield of the harvest.
And that preparation is detailed even further in the next verse, showing a truly meticulous agricultural level of care.
It does. Let's look closely at the intensive care described in Psalm 65.10 KJV. Thou waterest the ridges thereof abundantly. Thou settlest the furrows thereof. Thou makest it soft with showers. Thou blessest the springing thereof.
This imagery is astonishingly specific. Watering the ridges, settling the furrows, softening the hard ground. It's not a careless flood. It is targeted, intelligent, tender care. Why would David go into such detail about the mechanics of irrigation? What does this reveal about God's character?
It reveals that his providence is not generic. It is intensely personal and customized. He knows exactly where the seed is planted, in the furrows. He knows exactly what needs softening, the hard sun-baked earth. And he knows exactly how much is required, watering abundantly. This perfect provision illustrates that God is not only powerful enough to create the world, but intimate enough to nurture a single crop to completion.
Which assures us that our individual specific needs are fully visible to him.
They are. And this meticulous physical process holds a powerful spiritual analogy, linking the rain to the spiritual provision of his word and his spirit.
That is the critical connection the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team urges us to make. Just as God meticulously provides rain for the physical harvest, he provides his word and his spirit for our spiritual growth.
The Holy Spirit is precisely like that river of God.
Bringing life, softening our hearts, producing fruit. We can draw that parallel directly from Isaiah, can't we?
Yes, the parallel is crystal clear in Isaiah 55.10 KJV. For as the rain cometh down, and watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth.
So the word is guaranteed to work, just like the rain.
The efficacy is guaranteed. The word and the spirit accomplish the purpose for which they are sent to produce a harvest.
So if we are the recipients of this divine irrigation, we have to ensure our hearts are ready to benefit from this limitless source. What's the corresponding action step that ensures spiritual fruit is produced?
The action step focuses entirely on receptivity, on the condition of the heart. We are called to resolve to cultivate a heart that is soft like the ground, softened by gentle showers, to ensure the word and the spirit can actually sink in and produce fruit in our lives.
Because if the ground is hard,
If the ground is hard due to pride or cynicism or resistance, the provision, the word, the spirit, it just can't take root. This requires actively removing the hardness of distraction or self-sufficiency and allowing the river of God to perform its transformative work.
that is a highly practical metaphor for spiritual receptivity. And when that receptivity leads to a fruitful life, the psalm concludes with the overwhelming result, a crown of abundance and universal joy.
The grand finale.
We've arrived at the culmination of provision, moving from meticulous care to just overwhelming generosity. David describes a scene of radical overflow.
It's beautiful.
It is. Psalm 65.11 KJV. Thou crownest the year with thy goodness, and thy paths drop fatness.
This is the imagery of radical abundance. It's so far beyond mere necessity. To crown us the year means God marks the entire agricultural cycle with his generosity, bringing it to this glorious, abundant climax. And that metaphor, thy paths drop fatness, it's wonderfully visceral.
It's a strange phrase to our ears.
It is, but the commentary defines this as an overflow. Wherever God walks, wherever his presence or influence extends, there is rich blessing and abundance. The land is so rich that the paths used for travel leave a trail of richness, like oil or nourishing dew. It's an overflow of goodness.
It suggests the blessing is so great it can't be contained within the cultivated areas. It spills out into unexpected places.
And that's exactly what the next two verses depict.
Psalm 65.112, KJV. They drop upon the pastures of the wilderness, and the little hills rejoice on every side.
And we conclude with the universal scene of joy and fulfillment in Psalm 65.28, KJV. The pastures are clothed with flocks, the little hills also shall shout for joy, they sing.
The significance here cannot be overstated. The blessing reaches the pastures of the wilderness. The wilderness is typically associated with scarcity, barrenness, and testing. It's the antithesis of abundance. But here, God's overflow reaches the unexpected, seemingly desolate parts of life.
That assures us that even our toughest, driest, most challenging seasons, our personal wilderness seasons, can be touched and transformed by His rich provision.
It's a tremendous point of encouragement. And the result of this provision is visible, tangible, undeniable. The pastures are clothed with flocks, signifying material, palpable blessing and prosperity.
And the whole of creation, the hills, is so impacted that they literally shout for joy, they sing. It's a complete celebratory restoration where joy is the only possible response to such a generous provision.
This overwhelming agricultural joy connects so perfectly to the ultimate scriptural promise of material and spiritual restoration we see in the prophets.
Exactly. This connects directly to the expectation of future, complete restoration, as foretold in Joel 2.24, KJV. And the floors shall be full of wheat, and the fats shall overflow with wine and oil. God's ultimate desire is not merely survival for us, but this overflowing, undeniable state of abundance where every need is met and joy is universal.
So, given this stunning picture of overwhelming goodness, which extends even to the barren places, what's the final practical mandate from the You Need Faith in Jesus team for us as we move forward?
The mandate centers on trust and visibility. God's goodness is abundant, not minimal. The action is to absolutely trust that even in our wilderness seasons, those unexpected trials, His path brings blessing. But we must also live a life submitted to Him so that it visibly demonstrates this provision.
Becoming like those pastures clothed with flocks.
Exactly. Our lives should become an undeniable, visible testimony to His abundant goodness, causing us to shout for joy because the blessing is just so evident.
This has been a deeply enriching deep dive into Psalm 65, and it was expertly guided by the commentary of the You Need Faith in Jesus team. We have traced the flow of David's praise from the quiet confidence of expectant waiting to the roaring, generous abundance displayed across creation.
The essential insights from this journey are really foundational for a resilient faith. First, that God is relational and defined by His listening ear, which validates all sincere prayer. Second, He offers purging grace, moving us from overwhelming sin to intimate, chosen fellowship.
And
third, that His power is abundant and awe-inspiring, ruling over both the order of creation and the chaos of human conflict.
And based on these truths, we have 3 clear, actionable steps that can integrate this knowledge into your daily reality.
Yes, they are. 1. Practice honest, daily confession. Immediately turn to the cross for cleansing and restoration without lingering in self-condemnation. 2. Intentionally look for the tokens of God's faithful power in the daily cycles of creation, the sunrise, the sunset, and let them become reasons for conscious rejoicing.
And the third step.
And 3. Commit to honoring your vows and daily commitments as a non-negotiable part of your active, mature worship.
Our entire discussion today noted the radical nature of God's generosity. His goodness is so profound that His paths drop fatness even upon the pastures of the wilderness. This is provision far beyond necessity. And this leads us to a final provocative thought to sit with today. If God's path, even in your most dry and difficult seasons, is guaranteed to bring such overflowing, rich abundance, what false definition of sufficiency or provision might you be holding on to in your own prayers? And how does recognizing His radical generosity change the way you pray for your current specific needs?
Ponder the breadth of that generosity. The God who cleanses your iniquities is also the God who crowns your entire year with goodness.
A huge thank you to the You Need Faith in Jesus team for providing such rich, actionable insights that helped us unpack this powerful psalm. Until next time, keep digging into the sources.